A quick video on saving seeds from salad greens. It's easy to save seeds from fruiting crops like tomatoes and peppers and squash because as you're preparing what you've harvested, the seeds are literally right there. Salad greens, not everybody does. It's not quite as intuitive, but it's definitely worth doing. Yes, when they bolt, the leaves get bitter. Yes, it's tempting to just yank them out of the ground, but please don't. A quick note on seed saving overall is there is a difference between hybrid and heirloom plants. A hybrid is a cross between two different parent plants, and those can be really, really great. Nature loves a mutt. Some of the best tomatoes, as an example, are a hybrid cross of two different known varieties. If you do want to save seed, it's good to have an heirloom plant. What that means is that at this point, the genetic content of the plants and their seeds has stabilized. It's a known genetic result. If I save those seeds, I will get that exact same plant effectively next year when I put them in the ground. I wanted to show how you know when they're ready and how to harvest them. I'm going to use my vit to show you that, but that approach is the same for spinach and lettuce as well. Let's start by how you know when it is ready to harvest. This half of the bed is full of my bolted salad greens. The way you know they're ready to harvest is when they look dead, when they're brown and crispy and totally dried out like this vit. That is when you want to harvest the seeds. I've tucked a bowl in here to collect the seeds, and you can see with plants like this, it's quite as simple as simply gently crushing these blossoms and letting the seeds fall out into your waiting container. Probably end up with a mixture of seeds and chaff in here. Separating that is not too hard. I have a simple household fan set up here. It is on low, and it's a little bit of a distance away from the table, so it's not blowing too strong. What you want to do is take the seeds you've collected and pour them slowly into a large bowl. Kind of wiggle it a little, and you can hopefully see a lot of this chaff is getting caught by that breeze and is blowing away. So every time you do this, a little bit more of this chaff is going to go off and get out of your seeds. You will have to play around a little bit with the speed of the fan and how high you hold it above the bowl while you drop it. But when you're done, you should have a pretty decent, clean set of seeds. This isn't perfect, and that's fine. If I was selling this commercially, I'd have to make it pristine. This has a little bit of dirt in and some chaff bits, but when I sprinkle the seed down next year, that will just work itself into the soil, and that is no big deal at all. And that is way more seed than I need of this particular plant. Touching on the brassicas, I'll splice in some footage here of how I harvested arugula seeds last year. My arugula seeds are ready to harvest. These are embarrassingly easy as long as you pick the right ones. When these are dry, you can quite literally come in with a bowl, like I'm doing here, and just gently twist, and they will pop open and drop their seeds everywhere. Second brassica to talk about is kale. The unique thing on kale is that it only flowers its second year. It is a biennial. So unlike this arugula here, which is currently in flower, this I will get some seeds off of later this growing season. This kale is my overwintered kale. And the nice thing about kale is that it is a very cold hardy green. So you can plant it in the fall, grow it through the winter, and harvest it in the winter. And as long as you leave a few leaves on it and don't totally kill it, in the spring, it will send up flowers. You can see these are the little yellow flowers. And then as the blossoms fall off, you kind of see these narrow little green tubes. If those are pollinated, they develop into really big seed pods, just absolutely full of seed. And when this is dry and mature, I'm gonna harvest it just like I did the arugula last year. Last brassica I wanna show you is broccoli. The trick with broccoli is that it's not a salad green. You're not harvesting the leaves. What we want are the unopened, immature flower blossoms of the plant. And you might think that that's incompatible with saving seed, because if you let those totally open up into the little yellow flowers like you see here and bolt and set seed, you've lost your floret, but there is a way to do it, and let me show you what that looks like. This half of the bed is my broccoli. Broccoli requires cross-pollination. You want more than one broccoli plant, so these are all the same variety. I've planted them together in a block. And you can see I'm starting to get heads, and thank goodness, even though we've had hot weather, this is not bolting yet. I'm gonna harvest this at the first sign of any buds opening. This one I already harvested, and this is how I save my seeds. When you harvest the center floret from a broccoli plant, it then sends out these side shoots or florets I'll harvest a few more of these. You can get kind of a second harvest off your broccoli. But I've already at that point then gotten, 2 harvests. If I can leave one of these little side shoots to go ahead and set flower and set seed, and then I can save seed for the next year. Now that you've seen the how, quick thing on the why. The first is you get really high quality seed for free. This Scarlet Kale is a perfect example. I love Scarlet Kale to death. I grow a lot of it, I use a lot of it, and this year when I started my spring seeds, I had 0% germination. That's just because the seed is really old, and this will happen. Seeds are only good for about 3 years. Sometimes you get lucky and they'll go as long as 5. And 1 packet, at least for me, is way more seed than I need. In effect, if I were to buy this every year, I would be constantly wasting seed. When I got 0% germination, I just let this kale, which was an overwintered Scarlet Kale, stay. I still planted my squash. You can see the squash and the kale are coexisting just fine. The squash is doing its thing and spreading and taking over the garden. And in the meantime, I've got these little yellow flowers on the kale. They're starting to fade and turn into seed pods. They've been pollinated. And one of these pods, candidly, would be enough for me to get probably as much kale as I need for my entire garden. I'll wait until these are fully mature and brown and dry, and then I will harvest them and have nice, fresh Scarlet Kale seed for next year. The second is you support a really healthy pollinator population throughout the growing season. It's really important for the rest of your crops, including your tomatoes and peppers. I took out the vit, but that was blooming, pollinated, and dead and mature already. The pollinators had a blast with that. Second was the kale. As you can see, we've got little yellow blossoms here, but a lot of these have now faded, and it's been pollinated, and I'm getting those brassica pods, alien-looking pods on here. That was sort of the second wave. My arugula represents the third wave. This is in full flower right now, and eventually will develop its own pods, but in the meantime, the pollinators are having a blast. And all of that then leads into my summer crops. Now I have peppers with some blossoms forming, I have some tomatoes with blossoms, and this borage, which was an intentional pollinator plant. By letting things naturally flower, set seed, and fade, you're also giving this nice, huge buffet and wide variety to your local pollinator population. The third reason to save seed is that you can select for plants that are well adapted to your climate. If you save seeds every year from the strongest and best plants, the ones that performed really well for you, then over time you'll find that you end up with a nice population of plants that are adapted to your climate. And last but not least, it can really encourage you to experiment and to try new things in your garden. It's a bit of a contradiction from before when I talked about heirlooms and hybrids. I have had volunteer tomatoes, as an example, pop up in the garden. I grow a variety of different tomatoes on the trellis behind me, and last year I had this volunteer plant come up from a tomato that dropped, and it was definitively a hybrid. I had at the time some cherry tomatoes and some paste tomatoes, and this volunteer plant that came up had these 1.5-inch round tomatoes on it. It was clearly not either of the varieties I had planted, but it was kind of cool. So once those tomatoes matured, I saved their seeds and I just labeled it 2021 Volunteer. And I'm going to grow some of those this year and just see what I get. Again, because I saved the seed and it was free, even if the results of using a hybrid seed are that I get a strange, wacky plant, I don't really care. And I think that that is a really good example of the freedom that you get when you save your own seeds. I might end up with a really, really cool tomato that I cultivate over the years that is great in my garden, and I did it for free. I hope my nerdy love of this topic has inspired you to attempt to save your own seeds, in particular salad greens. I personally really get a lot of joy and satisfaction from saving my seeds, and I think that you will as well. I hope that was helpful. Until next time, let me know if you have any questions and I will try and answer them below. Thanks.